Blackhawks fans, welcome to a brand new edition of the Four Feathers podcast. I am Ron Luce coming to you live. Yes, I said live on this Monday night. Wishing everybody a happy holidays. I hope everybody had a great Christmas. For those that are continuing to celebrate, I hope those things are going great this holiday season. And of course, the new year is on the horizon. Hopefully, people are staying healthy. I don't know about you guys. I've seen a lot of people I know getting sick. So we certainly hope everybody's doing well and healthy this time of year. Before we get started, it's been 10 days since we've come to you guys live. I want to remind you, everybody, to check us out over at Four Feathers Pod on the socials. You can find us wherever you listen to your favorite podcasts, Four Feathers Podcast. We appreciate the likes and the reviews and the subscriptions. And of course, if you really love us, please give us 5 stars. We really appreciate that. And of course, head over to OnTap Sportsnet on YouTube or on Facebook. Like, subscribe, hit that bell button, and you'll know when all of our great shows go live, including this one right here, the Four Feathers Podcast. I'm Ron Luce. I'm on a solo act tonight. GM Ron is one-on-one with the people, with the public, with everything else. Mr. Anthony Marchese is off on vacation with his family this week. The boss man gets time away too. And then I'm here to you live. We need to talk before the clock strikes midnight on Wednesday, and we are into 2026. And that brings us to this episode here. This is episode 12 of season 7. Blackhawks turn the page on 2025. And we'll do a little reflection of the year as a whole toward the end of the show as well. But obviously, we want to get everybody caught up on what is to come. Merry Christmas to you as well, Nightmare 2. And he brings up a great point here. Saw the largest shootout winning goal in the shootout game winning goal. Whew. A lot of acronyms. SOGWG live, and it was fucking electric. I bet it was. Yeah, we have a lot of friends of the program, including Nightmare here down in the Dallas area. Blackhawks Cowboy, one of our contributors here at OnTap Sports Network, specifically for the Chicago Blackhawks. He was in attendance as well for that Saturday game, and awesome that the Blackhawks faithful down in Texas got to see a huge win because, again, this is not a Dallas Star team that is meh. This is a Dallas Stars team that's, top in the league. Nightmare, I see your comment. I'm going to hold off on that one because I'm not going to let you steal my thunder. We got a little bit more on that later on, sitting like 50 feet to my right. Oh, about Blackhawks Cowboy. Awesome. Love that everybody was in the same area. I think that makes it a lot of fun. And, of course, makes it a great time anytime you see a victory. Speaking of victories, they've been hard to come by for the Chicago Blackhawks. Let's get into it, shall we? Right now, since our last episode, there have been 4 Blackhawks games. Obviously, the Christmas break kind of dragged that out. Certainly could have been a 5th game in there, if not for the not only the play freeze, but the trade freeze that also happens at this time of the year during the holidays. I think that's one of the best things that the NHL does that doesn't necessarily get any credit. Like, you don't want to be sitting at Christmas dinner being traded. Like, that's the last thing anybody wants. So I think it's great that the league says, you know what? We're pausing business for 5 days. Go be with your families. Go enjoy the holidays. And then on the 27th, if they want to trade your ass, so fucking be it. And I think that's a great move when it's all said and done. There's 4 games, as I mentioned, and unfortunately 3 of them were losses. That Ottawa game, 6-4 loss to the Ottawa Senators. The Philly game, 3-1 loss at the United Center just before Christmas. And, of course, this literally just yesterday, Sunday at the United Center against the Pittsburgh Penguins. That Pens game was rough. I can tell you right now. I watched the 2 games over the weekend. I actually got to enjoy Blackhawks hockey for those 2 games. Also watched that Ottawa game as well. And I'll tell you what, that Ottawa game was fun, man. Like, I'm not one to talk about losses a lot when we are not just recapping a single game. But that game was fun because they didn't quit. And I know, the Ottawa Senators on paper, in the standings, really not that much better of a team than the Chicago Blackhawks are. But they have a lot more talent, right? They're deeper. They're younger. They have all of, a lot of their core pieces already in place, right? Jake Sanderson's a great player. Thomas Chabot's a great player. You talk about, obviously, their forwards, Brady Tkachuk, guy I would love to see in a Blackhawks jersey. Of course, he's up there. Now you got Dylan Cousins there after the big trade last year. So a lot of really, really good players up there in Ottawa. Tim Stützle, of course, as well. And man, especially after that first period. I remember watching that first period going, that was awful. Like they just did not look ready to play. They looked like they were sleepwalking through the first 20 minutes. And then out of nowhere, they came out gangbusters in that second period and actually looked like a real fucking hockey team. And I think that was so critically important for them. Again, I know losses have been losses, but I believe like what Jeff Blashill says, if you don't have good process, I don't care what the results are. It doesn't fucking matter. Right. So huge, huge, huge when it's all said and done and what's to potentially come of that. I think that's the real critical key with that game. Also fun because Nick Lardis scored his first career NHL goal. It was a beautiful play as well on top of it. I think, sometimes those milestones go unnoticed or kind of lost in the grand scheme of a season, especially when it's in a loss. I think we all recall Connor Bedard's first few games, right? He got his first career point came in a win, and he was all smiles for the camera, but then his first career goal came in a loss and he wasn't all smiles. I think Nick Lardis was all smiles for that one. That's a huge monkey off his back. It's too, especially after kind of a rough first few games as a Blackhawk, right? Came out against Detroit, didn't really do anything. Of course, it was a terrible game for the Blackhawks. Yeah, they keep following that up, keep following that up, keep following that up. And I think it was a little tough. But for him to get that monkey off his back, I think was why that game was so cool. I think the Philly game was what it was. I think, I recall the quote from Jeff Blashill right ahead of that game saying, this game's important and everybody's got their thoughts to the next few days because it's Christmas and family and tradition and yah. And he brings up a great point. It's a very easy game to be distracted. And the Blackhawks were just outplayed. The Flyers are a better team. They're competing in the East right now for a playoff position. They're bouncing kind of between, that back end of the top three in the Metro and the wild card position. A good hockey team when it's all said and done. They obviously improved significantly. Trevor Zegras leading the team in scoring. That was just a tough night for the Chicago Blackhawks. And then, of course, they bounced back. We're not even going to talk about Sunday's game. They sucked against the Penguins. The garbage time goals are fine and dandy. Whatever. When you're down 4-0, that's a tough start. A tough start for Spencer Knight. Arvid Soderblom, I think, did as best as he could after literally playing 24 hours before. But that's the game we want to talk about. A shootout winner against the Stars. And just the way that they kind of took care of business, right? Dare I say, it wasn't necessarily sexy. It wasn't necessarily, you weren't blown away by the fact that they got the win. Like, wow, they came out and just took care of business. But I'll tell you what, they got ahead and then they kept fighting back. And I think that's the thing I love most about this team right now. I'm going to take a quick pause because I do want to get to a couple comments here. Happy Monday. What's up, everybody? Happy Monday. And what's up to you, Daniel Berry Sports Highlights? Certainly appreciate everybody jumping in the comments. Nightmare dropping some more comments as well here. He says, unless you're in line for first overall, I deal the ones for Brady. I think you get to deal at least one of them. I think is completely possible. And it's a draft where that, in my opinion, that pick is going to carry a lot more weight compared to like last year's draft, for example, right? It was last year was everybody said it's a weaker draft class. It's not going to be as good. This coming, 2026 draft class is one to really keep an eye on. And I think we're starting to see that, right? Like that's kind of the thing here that I think we're really starting to see. So completely agree. I would trade again, at least one of those ones for Brady, maybe both, depending on where you fall. And again, how confident do you feel, right? We've seen Kyle Davidson when speaking on the rebuild, especially recently. Great article from Ben Pope over at the Chicago Sun-Times, just kind of breaking down what Davidson has in mind. And there's still a long way to go. And right, we're seeing that right now, right? Connor Bedard being out of the lineup, Frank Nazar being out of the lineup. When you miss your top two Cs, there's really nobody else to pick up the slack right now. Outside of a handful of guys that probably by the time you're truly competitive or maybe not even on this roster, or they are, true, hey, we're bringing you back on another contract. You have a specific role, play that role, do your thing. So we'll certainly wait and see, obviously, over the long term. But I think, he also said they might be a little bit away from making those big splash plays yet for like a Brady Tkachuk. Maybe that's the trade they make when he's in the final year of his contract. I think he's got 2 more years after this one. Don't quote me on that. It's been a while since I've been on Puckpedia, among other websites, kind of checking that out. But they really, really are going to have opportunity, I think, in a few years because they just continue to keep stockpiling the cupboard, as I've said here on the past on Four Feathers. But back to that Dallas game, I know Nightmare's got a comment on this one as well, but we'll walk through it here really quick because again, they get off to a hot start, right? Bertuzzi scores. You love to see Alex Vlasic on the score sheet. Landon Slaggert gets his first assist, first point of the season. In his return to the NHL after being sent down to Rockford at the end of November. Nils Lundqvist, of course, they retaliate and score. I mean, Mikko Rantanen and Wyatt Johnston. Johnston had 3 assists in this game. Rantanen had 2. I mean, those are the 2 of their best players in Dallas. So, of course, you knew they were going to get in, but great effort by Jason Dickinson in the second period to give them the lead again. They did end up crediting Lev Shinov with an assist on that one. I think that's kind of important because it was very much a good individual effort from Dickinson. And, of course, the 2 goals that got it further. Pardon me, Rantanen had 3 points in this game, one of those being a goal in the third period. That ultimately gave the Stars that lead. But then another Tyler Bertuzzi goal and another Alex Vlasic assist. He had 2 in this game, and Murphy as well were able to tie things up. Ultimately, overtime, not enough. Shootout. Only 3 guys score in the shootout. Donato, Duchesne, that kept it alive beyond the 3 rounds. And then, of course, as we mentioned a little bit earlier, that Nick Lardis GWG in the shootout was certainly cool. But I do agree here with Nightmare. It's his biggest issue with the Stars game. The defense getting caught flat-footed and giving up 3-4 clean breakaways. And I think that's a lot of this team either A, being young, right? Lev Shinov, Vlasic, maybe not so much Vlasic, but certainly Lev Shinov, Kaiser. When he's been up, obviously Sam Renzel, obviously he's not up right now, but those guys are going to have those instances where they make mistakes, right? Even Louis Crevier, right? It's going to happen. But you also see that too now with Connor Murphy's not as fast as he used to be and doesn't have the same, foot speed. Matt Grzelcyk, you could argue the same thing, right? So I think a lot of that is personnel. Some of that system too, like Blashill knows they're going to give up chances. It happens because they want the D to be active. And if those guys aren't getting back and in perfect positioning, they are going to give up a lot of those clean breakaways. But I think huge credit when it's truly all said and done to, Arvid Soderblom, who had an absolutely spectacular game, really. I mean, giving up 3 goals against that team was certainly impressive. Vlasic was more successful entering the zone than the rest of the team combined. I like Alex Vlasic when he enters the zone. I think he's, because of his reach and his length, and he's very calm with the puck. Like, I know he's not known for his puck moving, but he's very calm with the puck when he does take charge and get into the zone. And I think when you see that, you really are impressed with just what he's able to do. And I would really, really love to see him do that more often. I really think if Alex Vlasic can continue to unlock a little bit of offensive prowess over the course of the next 2 years or so, as he continues to develop at the NHL level, I think that's going to do wonders for this blue line. Our good friend, Mr. Tony Marchese. Hello, my co-host and big boss man. Merry Christmas to all. Merry Christmas to all. Howdy from Florida, Ronald. Howdy to you from cold, and I can say snowy Chicago because we got a little bit of snow today here, along with this nasty wind that we've had. And Nightmare puts it well as well. That kick save from Soder was bonkers. Bonkers is one of my favorite words. So that one gets a gold sticky star. Thank you for that one, good sir. Quick water break here, and we'll keep pushing through. So again, 4 games, only 1 win. It requires extra time to get it done, but they manage to avoid the shit of a longer losing streak, and they get one in Dallas. And I'm so happy, Nightmare, that you got to see it as well as Blackhawks Cowboy. I'm glad friends of the program were in attendance for a Blackhawks winner. And I'm hoping to be in attendance for a Blackhawks winner tomorrow, but we'll talk about that in a little bit here. He also says Ryan Green, so close to becoming a legit NHL player. I'm telling you, I really like Ryan Green. Baseball in the mind. Riley Green, Ryan Green, too close together. They are really, really, really close to him being a great player. I see the flashes, even just the little shit that he does in his game. I think Green's going to be a really good 2-way forward for a long time. He's not going to be the guy that lights up the score sheet. He's not going to be the guy that necessarily gets all the love, but man, he's going to do the shit that they absolutely need to do. And I think it's going to go absolutely fantastic when it's all said and done. Let's continue moving. We've got some comments about this already. Oh, don't you worry. Oh, Tone knows I'm not talking about the juniors yet, but he had some thoughts. Well, Tone, you timed it up pretty well because here we go. We are on to our World Juniors discussion. This is something right now that I think while Blackhawks fans are sitting here, and are not being able to, you know, enjoy, I guess, maybe Blackhawks hockey the same way we were earlier in the season. You can right now with the World Juniors tournament because it has been uber Blackhawks focused. And really, again, with only 3 guys participating, I say only like that's not a big deal. It's still a big deal. But all 3 of them are having an incredible tournament thus far, and I think are gonna continue to have incredible tournaments because I think, for example, Team Sweden's a fucking wagon. I think they're gonna go all the way to the gold medal game even if they don't win it. So, it's gonna be that kind of thing. And Tone's got his thoughts here. How about AJ Spalaci? Looks good in the World Juniors. Has not been talked about much in the Hawks prospect pipeline this season. Love to see what you've seen so far, Tony. And you're 100% correct. And I am sorry that you're mad that you're not on the show. Unfortunately, you're down in Florida, and we needed to get a show out. I'm sorry, it happens. But let's talk about AJ Spalaci. We can start off with him because I know everybody's probably wondering, oh, what about the other 2 names? Don't worry, we're going to get to them too. But AJ Spalaci, Tone, to your point, I think the reason he doesn't get the love that he probably deserves is because he's not going to be that star top 6 forward that's scoring all the time, like the likes of possibly an Anton Frondell might be, or like a Roman Kanserov, who obviously people are following in the KHL, or even the current guys, right? Connor Bedard, Frank Nazar. He's not going to be a scorer. He's he's about a point every other game guy in the OHL right now. That's not his role. He's not a scorer. Does he have some scoring touch? Absolutely. I think you're seeing what he can do offensively, especially playing with better players, right? Let's be honest, this Team USA World Juniors team is astronomically better than any OHL team he's going to play for. When you get elite talent with him, but he's showing that he can complement that. And that's where I think guys like AJ Spalaci, John Mustard is another name that you hear a little bit about right now in the college ranks. I think those guys are ideal bottom 6 players that in the future are going to just be kind of the motherfuckers, right? We've seen it, we saw it during the cup run. We've seen every team that's won Stanley Cups. You have those guys on the roster who are just agitators and they're balls to the walls every play. That's kind of the role that John Madden took in that first Blackhawks Cup, right? I mean, he was a 4th line center, but it was just balls to the walls every shift. AJ Spalaci is going to be that kind of player because he's a freak athlete and he's huge, right? This is a guy that could have gone collegiate, played collegiate football in the United States. I mean, he is that good. Chose hockey instead. Kind of feels like Mason West a little bit, right? Who's now with the Fargo Force. Actually, a good friend of mine was up in Sioux Falls over the course of the last few days. Got to see Mason West play live and in person, which was certainly pretty cool as he got a look on the top line for Fargo. But I think Spalaci is going to just be that 3rd or 4th line winger who he's going to grind out on the PK when you need energy, big hits. Think kind of what Colton Dock has become to the Chicago Blackhawks team. I think he's in that same mold. And those guys are just as important as your Connor Bedards or Anton Frondells, all those type guys as well. They just bring in a different element to the game. And I think that's what Spalaci's going to be. And to your point, Tone, I think that's why we don't hear as much about AJ Spalaci because he's not putting up the sexy numbers in juniors, right? It's all the guys that produce at high levels in terms of scoring that get a lot of the prospect focus. And that's why Spalaci hasn't. But guess what? AJ Spalaci knows his role on that USA team. And it's to be a motherfucker. And it just so happens that he's put up 4 points in 3 games, including today, Monday, December 29th, in that USA victory. Scored a goal on the PK. It's just a little poke, but that's an effort play. That's a play to beat your man to the spot. That's a play to be in the right position. That shit is just as important as the guys that put up the big, sexy scoring points, right? He had the huge hit in that game that really sparked, a lot of after the whistle nonsense and kind of got the temperature up a little bit in that game. And then he had another game in the opener where he had 2 assists. So he's showing he has some of that scoring prowess. But when he's playing with higher level players, he's thriving. And I think that's why I think after this season, AJ Spalaci could be a guy that he maybe plays in Rockford for a little bit and doesn't put up the sexiest numbers, but comes up and just he knows his role. He executes on that role and just owns it for as long as he's a Chicago Blackhawk and as long as he's in the NHL. So I think that's why we don't hear more about AJ Splacey-Tone, because he's not putting up the sexy offensive numbers in the OHL. But he's had a great tournament so far, and I think he's just as worthy of discussion as the next two names that are on our list right now, and that is Anton Frondell and Vaclav Nestrasil. First, we'll start with Frondell, obviously the sexy pick, the number 3 overall pick in the 2025 NHL draft. He's off to a hell of a start in this tournament. 5 points in the tournament so far. He's tied for first in goals with 3 in 3 games. He has 2 assists on top of this. Well, that puts him third in the tournament in points. He's getting really comfortable on that right face-off dot and just ripping one-timers. Nightmare says it here. Bertuzzi, Bedsy, Frondell on a power play line would be filthy. Frondell's got a hell of a shot. And I think what's so important about this tournament for everybody that's watching with Anton Frondell, and I know he's one of the best players in the tournament, right? He's a high draft pick. These are under 20 year age players, right? But he's showing that he can play on the smaller ice. And I think that's very key. And he also knows his role on the smaller ice, right? He doesn't need to be the fastest guy on the ice because there's less space. He doesn't need to be the most physical guy on the ice necessarily, but he's got great size and he's not going to just get pushed around all the time. But son of a bitch, he's going to find the open area. And if you feed him, he's going to fucking rip that shot. And that's what the Blackhawks want. That's why I don't think he's a center in the NHL. I think he's a perfect winger. You put him on Bedard's line, you put him on Nazar's line, you put him in the top 6 on the wing, and you let him do exactly what he's done in this tournament. Just fucking crank it. We might be changing the just fucking crank it graphic. I think it's original. It's Alex DeBrincat, I believe, from back in the day is the silhouette. We might be changing it to Anton Frondell in the future because this guy's got the shot and you're seeing it right now in this tournament. I'm so stoked to get on X every single day of this World Juniors and just see Frondell's name continue to pop up, winning, player of the game. And it's huge because that's part of his development. And playing on the smaller ice, right? Tony had mentioned this before, right? About how, there was concern about the translation from the European ice to the North American ice. He's playing on North American ice, and he looks good. He's fucking ripping it. I'm not really worried about Anton Frondell. I think Anton Frondell is going to be just fine, truthfully. And that shot, just remember that shot because that's what's going to get him to the show when it's all said and done. A couple more comments here. Nightmare, give me all the motherfuckers, all of them. Yeah, hey, bottom 6 guys are just as important as top 6 guys. They just have different roles. And then another comment here from Nightmare as well. You have 2 stud smaller centers. You can afford to make Frondy a big winger on those lines. 100%. Absolutely agree. And that's why, that's why I think like a Roman Kantsarov, I think he's going to be a great player, but he's going to need to play on a line with another big guy. That's why I think Kantsarov is ultimately not going to play with Bedard. This is just weird Ron Luce foresight of what I believe, but I think if you're really trying to predict, which none of us know what the fuck's going to happen, but if we're really trying to predict the top 6 right now, based on young players that are in the system or currently with the team, obviously Bedard's your 1C, Nazar's your 2C at this moment. You're probably looking at Kantsarov playing with maybe Nazar and like another big winger. Maybe that's Bertuzzi. Maybe that's an Ilya Mikheyev type player, right? Size, speed, things like that. Guys that are willing to go into the dirty areas and open things up for your creative offensive players. And then I could see an Anton Frondell playing with, a Connor Bedard. And that's where maybe like a Ryan Donato makes a lot of sense, right? Because he does have some of that scoring touch where he can certainly balance out those guys on that top line. He can take draws for you. This is also where I think Ryan Green could be great in that role. Be the guy that just digs pucks out, because he's shown he can play well with Connor Bedard. And I think that's incredibly important. We saw guys like Chris Kunitz and Pascal Dupuis put up incredible NHL careers because they played on the same line as Sidney Crosby. I mean, if we're being honest, the best player individually that Sidney Crosby has probably ever played with on his line routinely was probably Jake Gensel. Otherwise, good NHL players. Don't get me wrong. Like Pascal Dupuis was no little name before playing with Crosby. Kunitz kind of the same way. I mean, he made a name for himself on an Anaheim team that won a Stanley Cup. But when those guys got on that line with Crosby, they knew how to play with elite talent like Crosby. I think we're starting to see Ryan Green learn how to play with elite talent like Connor Bedard. I could see a line of Bedard, Frondell, and Bedard, and Green, Bedard, and Frondell, pardon me, at some point in the future. And I think it would make a lot of sense. So, hate to go off on a little thing there, but that is what it is. Brady fucking Kachuk and cancer. I can't spell on Ruski. Cancer off. Yeah, man. I mean, that would be sick too, but we'll have to wait and see. That's kind of the fun of wondering what's to come. But let's talk about the last name, because this guy really, really was just under discussed in the world of prospects. Holy hair, my hair is a fucking mess. In the world of Blackhawks prospects, Vlatko Nestrasil has not, I don't think, gotten enough love. Good friend of the program, incredible content creator, the prospect Don, Mr. Anthony Donati himself, has done a lot of great, sharing, analysis, things like that on Nestrasil. And it's probably one of the few people that's constantly, I'll call it pumping his tires a little bit. But Nestrasil he's big. He can grow into that frame still. And he's having an incredible freshman season at UMass. I mean, he's one of probably the better freshmen in NCAA right now. He's certainly not the dude, but he's up there. He's having a really respectable year. He's doing a lot. I think he's setting a couple of UMass freshman records. And this is a guy that they took at the back end of the first round. We got to give a lot of credit to what Kyle Davidson has done at the back end of the first round, just as much as what he's done at the front end of the first round. Because here's the thing, and a lot of people don't realize this. Once you get past, I believe it's pick 12 in the first round, statistically speaking, there's about an equivalent chance that a late first round pick, so somebody that's picked between 12 and now obviously 32 with 32 NHL teams, in that range, has the same likelihood of making the NHL as a guy that's a third round pick. I don't know the exact statistic. I remember reading it years ago, and it's always stuck with me. And that just shows you have to be able to draft and develop in the second round, right? We've seen Tampa be great at that. We've seen all the good teams that have been good for a long time get guys like Nikita Kucherov in the second round. Oh, weird. The Blackhawks got a Russian named Roman Kanserov in the second round. Go figure. You need to be able to hit on those guys just as much as you need to hit on the high-end talent, right? You can make the argument, oh, well, they've hit on Frondell, potentially. He looks really good right now. They've hit on Connor Bedard. You hope they've quote-unquote hit on Kevin Korchinski. Hopefully, he gets to that point in the future. Sometimes you're going to miss on high-level talent. But you got to be impressed with what they've done in that back end of the first round right now. Sam Renzel was a late first-round pick. Overall, looks pretty good. He's got some growing to do, but that was kind of expected. He's still super, super young. You can make the same argument about Kevin Korchinski, for example, right? Oliver Moore was the 18th overall pick in the NHL draft. He looks really good. He's finding his role. He's going to get probably an elevated role on Tuesday's game, because we saw Monday's morning skate, and he was skating up on the second line. I think that's awesome. Give him the opportunity while guys like, Frank Nazar and Connor Bedard are hurt. Frank Nazar was a 13th overall pick. By definition, he falls in that range. And right now, again, it's still a small sample size. There's a lot of what if that can still play into this, but he looks like a pillar of the future potentially for this Blackhawks team. You know what you're getting with Frank Nazar, or at least have a general idea of it. And then you continue looking at what they've done in the back end of that first round, right? Even the most recent draft, Nestrasil was in that conversation, for example, right? We saw them take Sasha Boisvert, 18 overall. We saw them take Marek Vanacker late in the first round. Mason West was a late first round pick as well. You see the where the talent's coming from? Kyle Davidson's done a really good job accumulating talent in that back end of the first round with guys that are high upside talents. And Nestrasil, I think, has exceeded everybody's expectation thus far. And he's done it in the tournament. Sure, 1 goal and 3 assists, 4 points in 3 games is impressive. But the no-look pass, gross. The no-look snipe, even more disgusting. He's putting up highlight plays for Czechia in this tournament. And that is so important for the future because that's another big winger that could turn into a reasonable contributor at the NHL level. Kyle Davidson, not all of them are going to hit, and that's just numbers. If you like gambling, you're already playing odds as it is. This is just calculated gambling. But when you got more throws at the dartboard, more, chips in your hand, whatever the acronym or metaphor that you want to use is, he's really, really giving himself a lot of opportunity here. And Nesterstill's one of those guys that late first, second, even third round talent. AJ Spilacci was a third round pick. John Mustard was kind of in that range as well. We've seen them get a lot of these type of guys. Nick Lardis was a third round pick. They're going to need those guys just as much too, and it's been really, really exciting to see. Kyle from Chicago is a Michelin chef. I certainly hope so. I think you can make the argument that he's at least on the watch list right now because everybody around the league sits here and goes, they got a nice prospect pool. And if 2/3 of those guys develop into regular NHLers, they could be a really good team for a long time. And that's going to allow them to, we've already heard Danny Wirtz confirm that they're willing, they value their business connections and partnerships in Chicago. And because that means that's money that they're going to be able to invest in this team all the way up to the cap when some of these other teams don't want to spend all the way to the cap because of how fast it's rising. We're playing the chess, not checkers here, people. And that's all things you got to keep in mind here as the Blackhawks continue to go. It's going to be absolutely crazy. So give up the next 5 first, unless one over one for Matthew and Brady and get the Kachucks in town. Matthew's not going anywhere from Florida, but Brady, I don't know, man. Again, he's only on a couple of years left. I know he's their captain, and I'm sure Ottawa's going to do everything to keep him, but if for some reason they can't come to terms on a deal and Brady's got a chance to go to Chicago and they can trade for him and they have the assets to do it, you wonder. It makes you wonder if something like that could happen. Hawks have struck deals with Ottawa in the past. They sent Alex DeBrincat there. Who's to say that they wouldn't do something like that down the road in the future? Frank the Laser Nazar, first ballot Hall of Famer. Shit, I certainly hope so. So World Juniors has been awesome so far, and it's certainly far from over. Goes through pretty much the new year here. We're running out of days. If you got time, tune in. It's in North America this year. I believe it's up in Canada. This is the time where you're actually going to be able to watch normal time games. You're not trying to watch games at 6:00 in the morning because they're being played on the other side of the world. Tune in, see Anton Frundell in Sweden, see Nestrasil in Czechia, see Spilacci in USA play because they're fun, man. And it gives you just a little bit of a glimpse into what potentially could come down the pipe here in the future for the Chicago Blackhawks. And I think that's really, really exciting. Speaking of things that are really, really exciting, we'll keep this thing moving forward. Connor Bedard skated on Monday. Pretty cool, right? I would say so. Jeff Blashill did comment on it on Monday. He said that this doesn't change his timeline per se. They still believed it was probably in that, 4 weeks range. We probably won't see him until mid to late January is probably my guess at this point. But it's still encouraging because he's out there, he's doing drills. They have a plan for him, which was also something that Blashill said, to keep kind of checking on him and making sure that he's got what it takes, right? And he can play through that shoulder injury, whatever it is. I think he's going to need to clean something up in the offseason. I wouldn't be surprised if there's a small procedure done, just clean up some scar tissue or whatever it is. But that's going to be really, really key for the Hawks here soon. So Connor Bedard skates. He didn't practice with the team. This was before practice, but certainly worth noting. Speaking of the roster, we'll just keep this thing moving. Again, I don't have much else to say with Connor Bedard right now. I want him healthy because we see how this team is when you're all-world player is not on the ice and not in uniform on a game-to-game basis. Speaking of roster moves, as we noted, so the Blackhawks, as we noted a little bit earlier, called up Landon Slaggert right after Christmas. He, quote-unquote, re-debuted again and made his first appearance since the call-up on Saturday, had the assist, played a lot of minutes. That's something I want to get to here on Landon Slaggert in just a second, but we'll share the full news. And then today, Dominic Toninato. One's a hard one even for me, Tony. I know you're still listening and you can appreciate that. He is sent down to Rockford. There was no corresponding move, so it really does feel like this is a Toninato for Slaggert type move at this point. Nick Foligno also returned to the lineup over the weekend. He played against Pittsburgh, scored a goal in that game, despite the Blackhawks losing a full touchdown, an extra point to a field goal. It was Sunday football day. How can I not say it? But it's good to see him back. We talked about it here on these airwaves. I think they missed his captaincy. I'm hoping it starts to kick in the next game because it sure as hell didn't kick in during the Pittsburgh game. But they're going to need that without, two of your top young players right now to, keep bringing these young guys along that are still healthy. Lardis, Moore, of course, the slew of young guys on your blue line. And even a Landon Slaggert at this point, who, again, I want to talk a little bit about here because this is critically important. Landon Slaggert, this season especially, right? He came and made his debut, right? We saw the 16 game sample size. He got 4 points. People are a little excited. He's shooting a little bit. Really did a nice job playing on Jason Dickinson's wing. They're really good defensive line. And people were starting to hope, like, oh, maybe this is a bottom 6 guy of the future. Played about 11 minutes, 16 seconds. Then last year, you see more of him. He's averaging over 12 minutes of ice time, but he's really not shooting the puck. Only 34 shots on goal. For reference, in 16 games, he had 14 shots on goal. In 33 games, he had 34 shots on goal. Not really shooting the puck all that much. 2 goals, 4 assists, though, last year, as we all know. 23 penalty minutes along the way. Things were looking up. And then it felt like this year he was just kind of lost. And not necessarily lost in like his game, but just lost in where he fit in this lineup. Wasn't quite the fourth liner they wanted. They did a lot of the 11-7 early on in the season with Renzel and Crevier. So we really didn't get to see a lot of Landon Slaggert. And that's kind of where I wanted to bring this to, because I'm looking at his game logs from this year. The most amount of ice time that he played in any given game, and I can pretty much tell you based off what I know that either injuries or they were just losing is probably the reason some of these numbers are inflated. He played 11:34 in that game against Buffalo back in November when they got their ass kicked, right? Of course, you're going to roll full lines. You're not going to overtire your top guys when you're down that much. So he played his most minutes then. 10:48 against Winnipeg at the end of October. Okay. 10:55 against the LA Kings at the end of October. Okay. 11:22 at Tampa Bay, which was a big win for the Hawks. If you recall, that's the one where they came back. The Donato goal still very much sticks out in my brain. He's in that game playing 11:22. But then all of a sudden, right, his last game in uniform, just 4 minutes and 53 seconds. And he was playing between 6 and 10 minutes pretty much routinely outside of the games mentioned, and wasn't even in the lineup for a lot of other games. But the last 2 games, he's been in the lineup for both Dallas and Pittsburgh, playing very high up in the lineup, getting a lot of opportunity because of the injuries right now. 14:53 against Dallas, had the assist, as we mentioned, on the first Tyler Bertuzzi goal. That was his second point of the season. It was his first assist. So, pardon me, he did score in that game against the New Jersey Devils way back in November, that TNT game, where Jack Hughes then afterwards ended up cutting his hand at Chicago Cut. That was that game. And then this last game, he didn't tally, but he was a +1. Which, think about that. You give up 7 goals and you're a +1 player. That's still pretty good. 21 shifts. He had 22 shifts against Dallas, 15:07 of ice time. Now, all of a sudden, Landon Slaggert's getting a little bit of opportunity. And I bring so much attention to something that feels so insignificant because I wonder now if they're starting to get what they wanted out of Landon Slaggert, right? We saw this last year, a very noted example that we use a lot here on the Four Feathers podcast is what Wyatt Kaiser did. And, made a couple different shuttle trips to and from Rockford, worked on things, came back, always looked like a better version of the player. I wonder if that's happened here with Landon Slaggert, where they said, hey, Landon, this is what we kind of need you to become. Go work on that in Rockford, and you're going to get another opportunity. And it feels like he did that. He was, again, pretty much down in Rockford for about a full month. Did some good things. There was a couple really nice highlight plays that he had over the course of his time down in Rockford. Again, he wasn't there for a whole lot of time, but he was still impactful in his limited time. Just 8 games played with Rockford, 4 points, 2 goals, 2 assists. You'll take that every single day and twice on Sundays. So I feel like he really has kind of gone down and worked on something. And I think as a result of that, I'm really fully prepared to see like what they do with Landon going forward, especially while Bedard and Nazar out. Is he going to continue to get top 6 minutes? Is he doing what they want him to do? I'm intrigued. I'm intrigued to see what's going on with Landon Slacker. Because again, this is all a developmental game for every single one of these when they get shuttled to and from Rockford. There's little things they want them to work on. They say, you're close enough to being an NHL player. We want you to do X, Y, and Z. Go work on it. You'll get another shot. And it kind of feels like it's Landon Slacker's time. So I'm keeping an eye on number 84 for the next few games. And I would certainly encourage everybody else to do so as well. That is what it is. Standings update, just really quick, and then we'll get into the segments here to kind of close out the show. 5 points out of a playoff spot still are the Blackhawks. Believe it or not, I know everybody's doom and gloom. There's still only 5 points out of this motherfucker. They still got a chance. And of course, just 1 point, though, from the basement. They're not in the basement, though. The Vancouver Canucks are managing to be shittier than the Blackhawks, which is kind of crazy. Talk about a team that's a huge dumpster fire. I would never want to be a Vancouver Canucks fan. They're just not doing great, man. Not doing fucking great. Big shout out to Ryan McGregor for reposting the stream today. Certainly appreciate that, good sir. All right. Well, you all know what's next. Let's get into some of our segments.
It's time to ruffle some feathers.
All right. I promised we were going to ruffle some feathers. I also promised our good friend Nightmare here that I would bring back his comment that he made way early in this show. Now, mind you, everybody, this was the third comment of the night in the stream. Nightmare does not have access to our Google Doc that we use for structuring our Four Feathers podcast shows. So I'm going to politely ask you to get the fuck out of my head because you were onto something here. Because I had this thought. Literally just yesterday. Tony, if you're still listening, I even texted him and asked the same question. Or at least I thought I did. Maybe I didn't, but I thought I did. Nightmare asked GM Ron, would you deal Tyler Bertuzzi? And that got me thinking. I was like, Tyler Bertuzzi's been really good. And I did a little bit of research. Before the show. I did some mathematics before the show. Tyler Bertuzzi has 29 points in 35 games. Incredible. Lately, it seems like he's learned how to keep himself healthier because a guy who really struggled to stay healthy, I think his career high in games before the last few seasons was 68 in Detroit. I believe that was his first full year in Detroit. He's learning how to stay healthy. 80 games with the Toronto Maple Leafs. In that season before signing with Chicago, he played all 82 games last year. So I did this based on an 82 game calculation here. Right now, Tyler Bertuzzi is on pace for, I believe it's 68 points as it stands, which would absolutely be a career high. His career high before that was 62. And he's on pace to score, believe it or not, 44 goals over 82 games. He's got 19 and 35 right now. And he's continuing to produce without Connor Bedard. 3 goals over the weekend. He had 2 in that game against Dallas, had 1 in the game against Pittsburgh. Pretty much a buzzer beater right before the end of the game. It begs me to ask this question because Nightmare asks his question. So I'm gonna bring it back up. He also adds here Bertuzzi for a mid-range 1. Sir, you asked me, would I trade Tyler Bertuzzi? Would I trade him? No. I think he's actually too valuable to this Blackhawks team. And quite honestly, I think he's one of the guys out of all the veterans that are kind of still on this team right now, that when this team's truly competitive, I could see him still sticking around and having a role here in Chicago. So no, I would not trade Tyler Bertuzzi. And he agrees. I'd keep him too. I'm just curious if teams now call the Blackhawks on Tyler Bertuzzi. And that's more where my thought goes. To that question, I say, yeah, I would be shocked if Kyle Davidson doesn't field at least 4 or 5 calls on Tyler Bertuzzi before the deadline, especially if he keeps up this pace. And he's pushing 30 goals by March, right? I guess statistically that's probably unlikely. Let's say he's in the high 20s by March. That feels a little more reasonable. Even mid-20s. His career high in goals is 32. So if he's trending toward breaking that number, somebody's at least picking up the phone and calling Kyle Davidson. Now, mind you, he does have modified no trade protection. So there is nothing that guarantees that he's going to be moved because he can have a little bit of control of where he would go. But you do wonder if a team comes and just throws the house at you and says, we want Tyler Bertuzzi because we have him under contract for all of the rest of this season and 2 more years at a very respectable $5.5 million a year. I think he's $5.5 million. Yes, he's $5.5 million. I really find it hard to think that a team's not going to at least call Kyle Davidson. In fact, David Pagnotta, the fourth period today, wrote an article, very just quickly, briefly touched. It was literally one paragraph in a very nicely written article that said he's curious about the Hawks and what they do at the trade deadline because there's a lot of expiring contracts on this roster. And we've talked quite a bit about a few of them here on the Four Feathers podcast over the course of this season 7 here. You know, the likes of a Jason Dickinson, the likes of an Ilya Mikheyev, the likes of a Nick Foligno, the Sam Laffertys of the world, Matt Grzelcyk's, Connor Murphy's, right? All these guys on expiring deals who absolutely could have value to a team that's making a playoff push. I especially think Jason Dickinson, Ilya Mikheyev, and probably maybe Nick Foligno as a fourth line guy. I think those players for sure, right? Dickinson can win you faceoffs. He's got some offensive ability. He's a really good defensive center, and he seems to be back to that because I think he's fully healthy this year, unlike last year where he really struggled. But I'm telling you, I think it's really, really interesting to just see what happens with Tyler Bertuzzi because I really do think there's going to be a lot of chatter about like, hey, teams are because remember Frank Saravelli now makes regular appearances on CHSN. He's well connected with the Blackhawks, probably more than any insider. I would not be surprised if you see him make a few mentions of Tyler Bertuzzi's name, at least being in like phone discussions. Probably for the report to just say the Hawks really don't want to deal him and don't really plan on dealing him, but they're at least fielding the calls. And I'm really interested to see what teams would value him at because he's 30, right? He's in the prime of effectively of his career. You know, if you're going by the human calendar, right? 28 to 32 is technically your prime, at least athletically speaking. But I really do wonder how many calls they're going to get because I really am curious because I think he's got a ton of value, and he's showing that he can score with Connor Bedard, he can score without Connor Bedard. He obviously elevates his game a lot with Connor Bedard, and he's also just a menace in front of the net. I mean, he's one of the best front of the net players in the league. I mean, all but 2 of his goals have come from like 3 feet out this season. That's just kind of been the name of the game for Tyler Bertuzzi. So very intrigued to see that. And this one comes from Nightmare 2 as well. It says, I think you keep Bertuzzi because Bedard likes him. I'd be cool dealing all of the other names you just mentioned, even more so. I'd say they absolutely should. I think they should only if they don't have a future here. So what I mean by that is I'm going to pull up the Hawks roster here really quick just to refresh my memory. So you've got Sam Lafferty, Jason Dickinson, Nick Foligno, Ilya Mikheyev, all on expiring contracts. Connor Bedard as well. We all know he's not going anywhere. Colton Dach also an expiring contract for what that's worth. Connor Murphy, Grzelcyk as well in that conversation. Even Ethan Del Mastro, who I think is a name that people would keep an eye on. And then, of course, Laurent Brossoit, right? Also still hanging around the organization. We don't know what his future looks like. These are all names, though, that they could absolutely deal. I look at this roster, though, and I say, I don't think Jason Dickinson is the type of guy that they say we need him for the future because I think you have a version of him in Ryan Green. I think you have a version of him potentially in Oliver Moore, where these guys can be really good, kind of third line centers, give you some offensive prowess, learn to win draws. Green already a pretty good face-off guy himself. I could really see one of those guys settling to that role. I could also see the Blackhawks when potentially probably needing to spend money this year to make the cap floor, because remember that cap's skyrocketing and they're really not anywhere close. You're losing a lot of money this year, including the dead IR money of Shea Weber. They're going to have to pay somebody. I could see a world where they pay a third line center a shit ton of money for like 2 years and say, hey, come fill, a bottom six role with us because we need to just make the cap while all of our young players are not getting paid. And sure, the cap floor could come with Bedard. You're 100% correct. But even then, I mean, we're talking it's going to be hard. It's going to be really, really hard. So pardon if my signal dips in and out here a little bit as I'm doing this, being on the website. But here we go. Per Puckpedia, you are losing $4.5 million of Nick Foligno, $4.25 million of Jason Dickinson, $4 million almost of Ilya Mikheyev. I think they keep Ilya Mikheyev, and we'll get to that here in a second. Sam Lafferty's $2 million. Colton Dach, even if he gets a small raise, you're probably looking at nothing more than like $2.5 million on like a 2-year deal for him. Frank Nazar, 6.5 does kick in next year. So that is worth noting. That kicks in. And of course, Connor Bedard, let's say that's another, we'll call it $15 million for shits and giggles. That still only puts them at $45 million for next season. Now, if you re-sign Mikheyev to something similar, that puts you a little closer to $50 million. But mind you, I think the cap floor is going to be close to $60 million. And on your defensive side, Grizzlick's money falls off. 4.4 of Connor Murphy falls off. 7.8 of Shea Weber falls off. They only have $8.1 million right now committed to their blue line next year. And most of that is Wyatt Kaiser and Alex Vlasic at 1.7 and 4.6 respectively. I mean, hell, Seth Jones' 2.5 is keeping you afloat there. But you're losing Laurent Brossoit's money as well. Spencer Knight's extension kicks in, but that's only about a $1.3 million raise. You're losing almost not even almost, a full $3 million of TJ Brody's money that falls off next year. They're going to have to sign like 1 or 2 young guys. And I like this idea as well. You could Ronald Acuna some of the young D-men. You 100% could. And for the non-baseball fans out there, they paid Acuna before he was a superstar, and he's on a ridiculously good contract down in Atlanta for the Braves as a really good young player. That's kind of what Atlanta does. They get their young players on guaranteed money sooner, so that way they can pay them a little bit less. Really what the Blackhawks did with Alex Vlasic, in my opinion, right? 4.6 is going to look like a steal for Alex Vlasic in like 2 years. It already is kind of a steal for what he brings to the table. I could see that happening, but you also have to remember, you still have another year next year of Artem Levshinov on his entry-level deal. You still have another year next year of guys like Renzel and some of these other guys. Crevier is never going to make that much money. So they're going to have to sign like 1 or 2 guys. I don't think it's going to be a lot of guys. I don't think they're going to go gangbusters in free agency. But I 100% think you're going to have to sign like 1 third-line center to like a 2-year, $4.5 million per year type deal, just to make sure you're kind of in the cap room. So I think Jason Dickinson gets moved. That was a long-winded way of saying I think he's the type of player that could get moved. He's also wearing a letter. Teams are going to respect that. That's going to provide value. He's a guy I think could very easily be dealt at the deadline. I don't think Nick Foligno goes anywhere because he's your captain unless he asks to go somewhere. If he's like, hey, I'm retiring after this year, I want to just, I would rather see, I'd rather try to win one more chance at a Stanley Cup in my career before I call it. But then, hey, Chicago, as soon as I retire, I'm going to come and work in your front office. Totally could see that happening, right? Or joining a coaching staff as like a developmental coach, kind of like Brian Campbell and Chris Kunitz and some of these other guys. Could totally see that happen. Or I could also see him just saying, no, I just want to ride it out like Pat Maroon and Alec Martinez did last year and just retire a Blackhawk and call it a day. So I don't know if he gets moved. If they want to keep him, I think they extend Mikheyev before they trade him. But I think he's also going to be the guy that yields you the most as well at the deadline. So he's the really fascinating name. And Nightmare agreed. He says, I'm keeping one of those names, expiring names. It's probably Ilya Mikheyev. I agree. I really like Ilya Mikheyev, the player. I just don't know if they feel like they can't replicate him. Because I look at a guy we just talked about at the Worlds. AJ Spalacci could kind of play the Ilya Mikheyev role, right? Like, he's probably not as good of a scorer right now as Mikheyev is, but the gangbusters, balls to the walls, what he brings to the PK, can make the argument that that's the type of player. But I really do think I like Ilya Mikheyev, and I really hope they keep him. But I feel like you have to extend him before the deadline if you're truly going to keep him. Unless they do the Ryan Donato thing, which had everybody sweating until he finally signed a contract before free agency opened, and then everybody was like, hey, all right, keep it moving. I would hope they could say, hey, Ilya, we really like you. We'll give you a 3-year deal for maybe $5 million a year, give him a little bit of a raise and say, thanks for playing, stick around and, keep being a PK ace for us for a few more years. I could really see that happening. So we'll have to see it happens, but that's a long-winded way of talking about what Tyler Bertuzzi could be as a trade chip. So I don't know if that ruffled feathers, but I really think it's interesting to see just kind of what could happen with this team. Cause I really do. I think the state of their team is fascinating because there's clearly a talent gap when you don't have your stars, and a lot of the other talent is still coming. So you kind of start to wonder, like, guys are going to have to get moved out if you're going to give Roman Kanserov, Anton Frondel, all these other guys opportunity. Who is that going to be is really what it comes down to. I also think Sam Lafferty's getting 100% getting traded. I have no clue when it's all said and done. Nightmare says, I expect a percentage of on tap as a show producer. I'll tell you what, Nightmare, you got to talk to Tony Marchese about that one. I have zero control over percentage things. I don't even have a percentage of on tap sports now. It is run by the great Mr. Marchese himself. And he does a spectacular job doing so. Let's change our tune just a smidge here as we get to our next segment.
Time to give out some stick taps.
I'm going to keep this one short and sweet. Stick tap to Nick Lardis. First career goal in Ottawa, the shootout winner against Dallas. He's had some really big highlights since our last show. And I'm really hopeful that 2026 is going to be really good to Nick Lardis at the NHL level. I hope he has a Frank Nazar type season the rest of the way, if he is in fact up for the rest of the season. Nazar kind of struggled early last year when he came up. Wasn't connecting a ton on points, but had really good underlying numbers. Lardis is not necessarily in that same category right now where he's necessarily driving offense, but I want him to get hotter and hotter as the season progresses. So that way, when we all sit here in April and are craving Blackhawks hockey in October, we can all kind of circle Nick Lardis' name and say, he's a guy we have to watch because he just got better and better as the season went on and has made a name for himself. And he's absolutely one of the prospects we're keeping an eye on. That's what I want to see. And so stick taps to him right now. Huge career milestones, an awesome highlight in Dallas. You help your team break a nasty schneid of losses. You avoid a 7th consecutive loss by winning that game. Awesome stuff. Nick Lardis, stick taps. And hey, you know what? Stick taps to you, Mr. Nightmare, too. Good friend of the program. I appreciate the back and forth conversation. Solo shows sometimes are difficult, depending on what's on the docket and what you want to talk about. You're always hoping and wishing for some good comments, and between yourself, between our friend Daniel Barry, and of course my great co-host, Mr. Tony Marchese, we heart you as well, sir, and I appreciate you jumping in tonight. This has actually been a really lot of fun. I went a lot longer than I expected to because of some great conversation and some great points as well that sparked our discussion. Finally, let's get to it. What's on tap next? Well, the Blackhawks are in action one more time in the year 2025. It is tomorrow night, Tuesday. If you're listening to this on Tuesday as you go to work, tonight's game against the New York Islanders. I will be in attendance. I'm very excited. It's been a little bit since I've been at the UC. I haven't been at the UC since about Thanksgiving time. So really, really excited about that. I'm hopeful that they can get a win. This is a good Islanders team. Their goaltending's been really good. Ilya Sorokin's carrying about a 2.5 goals against right now. His backup, David Rittich, is carrying a 2.3 goals against right now. They play defense and have good goaltending. Like, that's how they win hockey games. And the Islanders are second in the Metro right now. That Metro division's really, really tight. Another Metro opponent comes into the UC just after Pittsburgh departs on Sunday. We'll get to see the Islanders in action. They're led by Matthew Schaefer. I don't know if we're going to see Matt Barzal because he might get suspended for the two-hand slash to Mason Marchment. If you haven't seen that yet, head over to X and just type in Barzal Marchment, and you'll find it quickly. Marchment went knee to knee with Matthew Schaefer, number 1 overall pick this year in the draft. He's been phenomenal for the New York Islanders, by the way. What a get that was for them winning the draft lottery. And nasty knee-to-knee hit. Barzal didn't like it, came over, took exception, and just two-hand tomahawk chop right to his legs. Probably deserving, but there's very good chance he's going to hear from the league and he might not be playing in this game, or at least he'll appeal it and probably at least get to play one game. So we'll have to wait and see there. But leading scorers, Anders Lee, a guy who, if you recall, was in kind of the Blackhawks rumor mill at one point in time toward the end of last season, which we're going to get to here in a second. And then, of course, I'm really excited to see Matthew Schaefer play live. I think that's going to be really cool. Going with a good friend of mine, my friend Aiden. Tomorrow's actually his birthday, and that's why we're going to the game. So super, super stoked about that. Happy birthday, Aiden. Love you, buddy. Appreciate you. And can't wait to celebrate tomorrow at the United Center. But after that, it's 3 games in the new year, and that'll be right about the time that Mr. Marchese gets back from Florida, and we'll be able to join you guys before the Blackhawks jump onto TNT against the St. Louis Blues in that first full week of January. But before then, it's 2 games at the United Center. Thursday, January 1st, on New Year's Day, it's a 7:30 game against Dallas at the United Center. Hey, if you're off on New Year's Day, get out to the UC, go watch some Blackhawks hockey. No better way to spend it. And then Saturday, they are in Washington, D.C. That's a 6 o'clock local time start against the Washington Capitals. That'll be a tough game. And then Sunday, January 4th, against the Vegas Golden Knights. It's a 6 o'clock game. That is also the Brent Seabrook bobblehead night. So if you are, again, looking for some cool giveaways, the Brent Seabrook bobblehead for, I believe it's the first 8,000 fans in attendance. So if you're going to get there early, and you can get yourself a pretty cool bobblehead when it's all said and done for Sunday's game. And then again, we'll still see the Hawks quite a bit at home in January. The next one will be a Wednesday night game against the Blues. I don't remember if they're on the road or not. I literally just looked at the schedule earlier, but we'll get back to that later. So really quick before we wrap up, normally this is where we would shut down the show, but I do want to just do kind of a little bit of a recap here of the year that was in 2025. This is our last show until the year 2026. So for full starters, Happy New Year. I hope, if you're into the Chinese calendar, 2025 was the year of the snake, and it was about, kind of shedding the things in your life that you didn't need, and, finding what you weren't there and you needed to take a step forward. And 26 is the year of the horse, and it's a year to really fire forward and go for what you want. I think the Blackhawks are in the same position. They kind of rid themselves in 2025 of what they didn't need. As much as I think we liked Luke Richardson on this program as a coach, clearly it wasn't working. Anders Sorensen took over at the end of last season. We saw some growth in young players like Frank Nazar. We were waiting for the Connor Bedard explosion kind of coming into year 3. And it was a tough end. It was a tough end, but there was heightened expectations. And yes, this year, it's been a tale of 2 seasons so far in the 2025-26 season, right? A team that was on the brink of a playoff position at Thanksgiving to now at the bottom of the standings due to some unfortunate injuries. But a team that's very much not out of it. And I think has overall shown us they've taken a step forward. And that's been key. And a big piece of that was bringing in Jeff Blashill over the summer, because he's brought an identity to this Blackhawks team. Fight for your teammates, right? We've seen it in the every shift videos that they've put out on the Chicago Blackhawks YouTube channel. We've seen the tenacity that he has behind the bench, not afraid to tell a ref that they're off their basis, bringing a fire to the bench really for the first time since Joel Quenneville. Jeremy Collinton was not fiery. Luke Richardson really wasn't all that fiery. I think Jeff Blashill is what this team needed, and vice versa. And I think this team needed a guy, Jeff Blashill is a head coach again, after really not getting a totally fair shake against Detroit, or when he was in Detroit, pardon me. He kind of gets that second chance with a young upcoming team with some really good veterans and guys that are just good people. And you hear him talk about how much he loves this team and how much they love him. And it feels like it's meant to be. So they rid themselves of what they didn't need anymore. And I think they found what they want. I hope this Blackhawks team going into 2026 now, they sit here as of today, 14, 18, and 6. And I hope that means 15, 18, and 6 after the Islanders game. With 34 points, would be 36 if they win. But there's so much to come in 2026 to be excited about. And I hope we continue to see the growth of an Oliver Moore. I hope we continue to see the growth of a Nick Lardis. I hope we continue to see some of these veterans really find the opportunities for themselves. And Andre Burakovsky, a Tyler Bertuzzi, a Teuvo Teravainen, guys that are here for multiple seasons that are going to be a big part of helping some of these young guys along. This blue line taking another continued step forward. Maybe we get to see Sam Renzel again back in the new year here soon on the Blackhawks blue line instead of down in Rockford. Maybe we'll continue to see some of these other guys step up. And of course, Connor Bedard and Frank Nazar returning at some point. Frank Nazar's eating solid food again, which is awesome because everybody believes he broke his jaw. They said about 4 weeks. We're getting close to about 2 weeks through that already. So he should be back sometime in January, which will be huge. I hope he's Bubble Nazar too. If you remember Bubble Bedard, you know the vibes I'm going for. And then Connor Bedard, when he returns, picking up where he left off with his torrid pace, 44 points through 31 games. He's still the team's leading scorer, and it's not even close. He hasn't played in how long now, right? Those two coming back, and then a potential injection of youth at the end of this season. Guys that might sign after their collegiate years. A John Mustard, maybe an AJ Spalacy getting a cup of tea if his OHL team doesn't have a deep run in the playoffs. Seeing something like that. Realistically, he probably goes to Rockford on the ATO, if anything, but still an exciting possibility, right? Seeing that growth. Roman Kanserov, Anton Frondel potentially joining this team if the stars align and the schedules work. There's a lot to be excited about in 26 with the Blackhawks. And then an important free agent or important offseason coming up. Another draft with a ton of draft capital, a bunch of second-round picks, a couple first-round picks. Those first-round picks right now looking pretty good because Florida struggled out the gate. I think they're going to be in the playoffs, so that pick is probably going to end up being a late first round anyways, but so be it. Plenty of money to work with this offseason, a new contract for Connor Bedard. There's so many things to be excited about in 26 with the Blackhawks. And yeah, 25, whether it's in your personal life or whether it's a hockey fan, maybe wasn't what we all wanted it to be. But I really do believe everybody's seeing the what's to come, and there's real reason to be excited about 2026, both as a sports fan and just I think as a person. I know I'm looking forward to 2026 as a part of Four Feathers podcast, as a part of Bears on Tap, as a part of the On Tap Sports Network as a whole, in my own careers and endeavors, and I'll call it, I guess, not really side projects, but side careers that I like to do. And I hope all of you feel the same way. And I hope everybody had a great holiday. And I hope the new year brings you everything that you're hoping for. And I certainly hope it does to our Blackhawks as well, because man, it feels like they're trending. They're trending in the right direction. And now they're playing with house money. Just enjoy it. It's not all going to be pretty, but just enjoy it. Because one day we're going to be sitting here and bitching and moaning about this team losing on a Wednesday night because they're, chasing the first spot in the division with the Wild or the Avalanche. And it's really easy to lose appreciation for those teams too. I did. I'll admit it. Those cup teams, you take them for granted and then they're gone. And then you go, fuck, I'd kill to have that level of hockey back here. Just enjoy it. Enjoy the up, because the up is just as good as when you reach the pinnacle. It's part of the journey. It's going to be fun. And I think 2026 will be as well. So as always, I appreciate every single one of you tuning in with us here at the Four Feathers podcast. Again, our final show of 2025, season 7, episode 12. The Blackhawks turn the page on 2025, and so will we. We look forward to seeing you in the new year. We look forward to Blackhawks hockey in the new year. And again, head on over to ontapsportsnet.com and at ontapsportsnet on YouTube, on the socials, because the On Tap Sports Network, you can check out what's on tap in Chicago sports. Happy New Year, everybody. We can't wait to see you soon. From GM Ron and the rest of the Four Feathers crew, we wish you a great rest of your holiday season, a happy New Year, and we'll see you on the other side after a few more Blackhawks hockey games coming up. As always, let's go Hawks, baby.